So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started again after a busy coffee break, doing lots of networking. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Jane Elliott, Chief Executive of the Economic and Social Research Council. I'd like to start by saying thank you to James Cheshire and Alan Smith for fascinating presentations this morning. Really got the conference off to a great start. And I'll certainly be taking some of those ideas back to Swindon to think about how we can make the ESRC annual report a little bit more visually appealing and to have a bit more empathy in it for next year. So Bruce, who's my colleague in the audience, do make a note of that. Thank you. So I'm here just very briefly to introduce the next session and to really underline the ESRC's dedication to funding this area of big data. And we're really delighted that we've got the Consumer Data Research Centre that is supporting this conference. And Alex Singleton's going to come up in a minute to show you some of the new resources that are available on their website. And I think what's really important for us, as well as supporting academics to do research, is to be making research and data much more available to members of the public, but also to business and commerce. So I think the next two sessions where we have Alex Singleton talking about the CDRC website, and then we'll have presentations of the master's dissertations that have been supported by the demographic user group. I think this really exemplifies the importance of engaging both with the public and with business. So I'm not going to say too much because I want to leave plenty of time for the real events this morning, so I'll just invite Alex up to the stage. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation to do this. I'm based at the University of Liverpool, and this is a project we've been working on and quite excited about sort of over the sort of summer months, and it's sort of come to sort of fruition the past sort of couple of weeks. I'd like to stress that this isn't my sole output, and I've put the CDRC data science team underneath there. We've had several people sort of locked away in cupboards programming quite intensely. So I thought it'd be worth a mention. Indeed, Wen Lee's, I think, in the audience, and he's one of our sort of main developers of this. We're very excited about it. The domain for this particular website is data.cdrc.ac.uk, and it's available online now. This is the front page, and what it is, it aims to catalogue all of the CDRC data deposits, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a minute. For those data deposits which are completely open to download, you can register and you can click and actually get access to that data. Other types of data require more restricted access, and there's advice and guidance about how to get those data through the website. All of the data sets we've included on the website have searchable attributes and metadata, and we've provided a series of things that we'll call data packs, and I'll explain a little bit more about what they are as well. And the fourth aim of the website was sort of an overarching thing, just to make things simple. And we do that through visual interactive interfaces, training materials, which are sort of going to be coming on stream fairly soon, and also something that we're quite proud of, individual local authority data stores. So the catalogue of data deposits, we can browse it, so we can just browse by the different types of products, or we could browse it by the different types of topics. So some of the data products that we've created fit within multiple topics. So if you're interested in demographics, you can click on the demographics grouping, and it will give you a list of the data sets. When you click on one of these different types of product types, so in this example is retail, you also get flagged the access levels. So the secure, for example, or open are sort of highlighted on the web page. For secure and our safeguarded data, these require a registration and approval process before you can get access to the data. For open data, you can register and you can just download the data onto your machine there and then. It's very easy. It's a quick registration process. You can just click on the download button. This is an example of one of our sort of data partners, a local data company. As part of the CDRC initiative, we've negotiated access to some of their data. Some of their data sits within our secure and stakeholder archive services, and some aggregate data, some interesting resale statistics for 2009-2014. Vacancy rates in town centres are available to download. You can go and download those as open data. You might not necessarily want to be clicking through particular product categories or types of data products. So we've got a search function built in. So if you're interested in the internet, you can search on the front page and also any of the sub pages in the actual website. And this is an example of the this is an example of the outputs. One of the things which makes this possible is each data set has got a lot of this metadata associated with it. One of the advantages of having that metadata is later on, if we archive some of this open data in things like the UK Data Archive, it makes the automation of that process very, very simple. So we've tried to sort of adapt similar standards to what they use in their archiving processes. With each data set, you get text description, which tells you a little bit about the data set itself, and a series of tags which give you specific attributes of the data. So what types of topics? Is it a retail data set? Is it a demographic data set? And again, that's also built into the search criteria that's pulled up through the search menus. One of the other things we wanted to do, one of the other aims, was to create these data packs, and there's two different types of data packs. What we weren't interested in doing was just purely replicating data that was elsewhere. We don't see a lot of value in that. So we wanted to add value to existing open data resources. And then also we've created a series of data products, which are taking open data and other data, mixing it together into something new. I don't want to get sort of debate whether it's data is or data are, but that's the definition of open data from the Open Data Institute. Essentially, open data is licensed in a way in which you can use it for other purposes, typically just with attribution, and that includes commercial purposes. So one of the things which has always bugged me personally about open data is often it's incredibly difficult to find. You don't know really where to look. And then once you do find it, it's often very difficult to use. So this is an example from Ofcom, and I think this is actually great data, incidentally. And it's a postcode level model of broadband speed, which I think will be of interest to retailers. So you eventually find it on that very long URL at the base of that slide. You can click through, you can download a CSV file. You end up with this in an Excel spreadsheet. You don't know why all these NA values are there. You don't know where these postcodes are. And that's probably where you close the file and pretend it didn't exist. And we think we could have done a bit better than that. So what we've done with these Geo Data Packs, we do things like cleaning the data. We might add spatial references if it was a postcode file. We could change the formats of the data. We might add additional attributes. Maybe we provide a geodemographic code for some postcode level data. We add the attribute information, which feeds into this metadata. And then the important thing we do is for both national extents, we provide a nice zip file you can just download, and it's all fairly intelligible. We also create local authority versions of those data as well for sort of more localized use, and where appropriate, we've also done regional versions of them as well. And this is what a data pack would look like. It's just a zip file you download, shape files, tables in a nice open format like CSVs, attribute descriptions. You might have a PDF report about the data, for example. Data products are slightly different. So we take some of the open data, we add in potentially retail data or other data, and then we create a new product. So one of the examples I've got here is developed by someone called Dean Riddleston, who I've put down as CDRC graduate #1 because he's officially the first out the door. He might argue he's the #1 graduate, but again, Dean's also in the audience and can debate that over lunch. We've taken retailer data, we've taken some of these open government data, we've taken Dean, who now works at Boots, and he's built something called the Internet User Classification, and I won't go into too much about it, but it's basically a geodemographic of use and engagement with the internet, and it's available at a small area level. And you can go and download that, local authorities or national extent. And it's that mixing of data which is the innovation. And again, like the other data sets, which are just repackaged open data with additional attribution and cleaning, you again get a nice zip file with a report, a shapefile you can open up in a GIS or data lookups that you could feed into your database systems. The final aim, and I'm sort of coming to the end of my time, making life simple. One of the ways in which we've done that is borrowing some technology that James Cheshire, although I don't think he presented it this morning, has worked on through his DataShine platform. We've actually fed that into the CDRC now. We've got a CDRC Maps portal, and that's linked off our main data.cdrc.ac.uk website, and is also available at the sub-domain maps.cdrc.ac.uk. And for a series of our data products that we've created, you can browse those interactively through the map. And it's a really nice interface. You can add on things like retail centres, modelled catchment areas. You can pan the mouse over a map and it will give you a contextual legend menu, which gives you information about the local areas. And again, it's just about taking this data and making it more usable for people who aren't necessarily skilled in to actually build these map interfaces themselves. Second thing we've done is training materials. There are Jonathan Reynolds in the room, who's involved in coordinating our programme of training for CDRC. So we've got some training materials and we're linking those to the CCANs, so they're using data sets. We're also creating a series of online resources as well, which are almost ready to go, and they should be live on the website in the next couple of weeks. So you can actually download tutorials which use some of the data on the CCAN, and you can learn things about QGIS and R and mapping and data visualization through those resources. And then the final slide I've got, as I say, the thing we're quite proud of, which has generated quite a lot of interest this week in the local authority sector, is that because we've created these local authority extracts for a lot of the data which are on there, they can be repackaged into bespoke CDRC local authority data stores. So what that means is that for local authorities that don't have a data store, they've now got a repository of, I think in England, up to about 22 different data sets. Most of them are contemporary, it's not just the census, and there's lots of things there which they actually use and help make local decisions within their communities. And that's been picking up quite a lot of traffic this week. So I can take a few questions now before we move on to the next phase.
Does anybody have any questions?
Have we got a roving mic?
I was just wondering whether you would consider, given the theme of the conferences, how to reach decision makers, would you consider also creating constituency level data? Because speakers already deal with inquiries from MPs, but even though the local authorities are the primary administrative geography, MPs think entirely in terms of constituencies and their constituents. So obviously I don't expect you to give me an answer today, but if you're thinking about things to do in the future,
It's quite pertinent. I was yesterday compiling a list of MPs to start tweeting about this, so that's a good question. At the minute, the way in which the infrastructure is set up, it's fairly manual, so we actually script the creation of all these data packs outside of the CCAN system, which is the background software we use to disseminate the data. So we could rerun it for those geographies and have them as additional uploads, but actually what we would quite like to have is a way in which we could take the data, and I suppose this is phase 2 if you like. We'd like to be able to take the data and then delineate multiple regions. So it could be electoral, but it could be things like LEPs might be of interest, it could be health geographies and that kind of stuff. So if we've got the data in a spatial database, we can actually form any kind of outputs of interest to any different types of users. So it's something we're thinking about doing, but we haven't done it yet. No, okay. I think I now have the task of introducing the next section, which is the Master Student Projects and Prizes, and that's actually going to be delivered by Bruce Jackson from Economic and Social Research Council and Guy Langley from CDRC UCL branch. So over to you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone, thank you for having me here. So, like Helen here, I was actually first year in 2012 as entrant in this competition, so it's been particularly interesting for myself being on both sides of the story here. So just to give a brief summary about what the competition is. It's changed names a couple of times, but broadly the focus has always been on retail and consumer data. it gives companies the opportunity to go out to academia and invite a master's student who will subsequently apply for the projects to work on a project which they will set. And the students are also entered into a cash prize. We also have asked the industry sponsors to put in some money as well, only about £500, which isn't very much at all. And then students carry out research either at their own universities or in their own institutions or in the offices where they're required to work as well. It depends on the agreements that have been set there. And I guess one of the other incentives to competition is that all participants in the competition will be invited to the conference held in October, which is what we're at today. So the incentives, the incentives are fairly self-explanatory. I put this slide up here, which is more of a focus on skills and knowledge exchange. And that's sort of been the broad idea of the scheme, the idea that you can go to your university and say you want a student with some new ideas, some new skills to bring into our offices and our teams, some new ideas about what to do. But I suppose the skills sort of go beyond that as well. It's also about the networks and the ideas exchange. So if I talk about myself, for instance, had someone not taken the time to put in the effort to write a short proposal form back in January of 2012, I certainly wouldn't be standing here today. I don't think Helen would probably be here today if she wasn't part of this. There's also the opportunity to be spread into the CDRC network as well. There's lots of communication between the different partners involved in this and the different academic contacts as well. So in terms of the topics, as I said earlier, the topics have to broadly have the same sort of focus, and that's a focus on data. And the data is either based on consumers or the retail sector. It doesn't have to be data from the retailers or the companies themselves. It could be open source data and has been in the past. And typically, the projects are formed into two sort of branches. Either they use data themselves, and they're about analysing the data, visualising the data, trying to establish new patterns, or even explore new data sets full stop. Or they've been slightly more theoretical and been more about how data is handled, how data is shared, how it is accessed as well. And we'd probably like to keep those sort of themes as well. So the purpose of why I'm here now is not only to talk about this year's competition, but also talk about future competitions as well. So to give you an idea of what industry sponsors have to do is they first have to allocate someone who can act as an industry supervisor. This person has to meet with the student a couple of times, say 3 or 4 meetings, a couple of emails, a couple of very lengthy emails maybe in some cases, but generally the contact is quite minimal. There's not much input goes into these things. They are also required to select the student in the first place. The CDRC will manage the application process for you, and we would aim to forward you 3 or 4 applicants maximum, which have got past the first stage of the application process, and the industry sponsor will have the opportunity to interview these candidates either in face or on telephone and choose the appropriate candidate for them. And then the final thing which he asks all industry sponsors to do is to provide the student with a £500 bursary. I mean, this hasn't always been the case. I was very disappointed myself when I was handed vouchers for my work, my first project. But £500 is basically a very, very cheap internship because often these students do provide quite interesting insights into what can be done with your data. So to give you a broad idea for the timeline, up until December the 6th, we will ask projects to be proposed by various different industry representatives, and this ranges from the world of retail, consultancy. We've even had energy companies being involved in this in the past as well. So it's not just the broad spectrum of retail, it's wider consumerism beyond that as well. In January, shortly after my birthday, we'll be advertising the projects on the CDRC website. And it's between January and late February, perhaps early March as well, most applicants will be received. So between that period and the end of April, we will invite you to meet these potential candidates and choose the appropriate student for you. We'd also require that any data which you require a student to use is made available at that point as well. We do have problems with data access if not. The research takes place over the summer, and then in September dissertations will be submitted, and they'll be judged by a panel of judges, and they'll be presented at the conference where the prizes will be awarded as well. So I've put up this slide here on how to participate, but if you look in your packs we've given you today, there's actually a flyer on the email addresses and the contact details there. You'll be required to go to this webpage and fill in a proposal form. If you have no idea of what you want to do, or you've got a rough idea of what you want to do but don't know how you're going to do it, for instance, you're welcome to email me and start an informal conversation about what sort of ideas you can or may be interested in pursuing, and I'm sure we could probably arrange something. The deadline for this is the 4th of December, and that's because we have to be able to look through these project proposals first, make sure that they're academically valid projects. And also, some institutions do have quite heavy deadlines for the students in terms of when they are supposed to do their dissertation proposal deadlines. And I've also put a slide there just for the students as well, in case there's any that see this in the future. So I'll just very, very quickly talk about the outputs from 2015. We've had quite a good project this year, as I'm sure Bruce will agree later on, that we had 8 very strong projects, and it must have been an absolute nightmare for the judging panels. I think they were all a particularly good standard this year. We've put a very short extended abstract in your packs there. The dissertations themselves probably won't be released publicly, purely because of the sensitivity of the data in there. Although in the past, a couple of them have been made into the public domain through the form of conferences or even academic papers as well. So there are outputs which go beyond the conference here today as well. So the judging panel this year, who've been looking at the prizes, and we're looking originally to award 3 prizes, although I'm not sure if that was actually the case in this time, as I'm sure Bruce will confirm. And we're very lucky this year to have 3 good judges, Bruce Jackson from the Economic and Social Research Council, Tim Raines from Sainsbury's, and Chris Lloyd from the University of Liverpool. So I'd like to thank all the judges for participating this year, obviously all the students and their supervisors, both in academia and in industry, and then also to Professor Paul Langley, Keith Dunmore for helping organise this, and Nafta Vidge for helping with the write-ups at the end of it as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to announce the winners of the this year's programme. As always, the ESRC is very pleased to continue to support this programme, which provides a fantastic opportunity for students to work on closed, unstructured and proprietary data sets, made possible through the continued support of the DUG members and the wider community. It also provides a fantastic opportunity for the companies to gain access to high-quality students, set them to work on interesting projects, which often lead to relevant business insights, and more importantly, often directly onto job offers for the students as well. This is the 3rd year that I've been involved in marking the dissertations. This year's standard has been particularly high, which is fantastic for all involved, but it made the challenging process a little bit more challenging. So this year we were unable to separate just 3 award winners, so we've decided to make a 4th award. So the winners are Anastasia Yukafova at UCL, working with British Gas. This project was entitled, Can We Identify Vulnerable Energy Customers in the UK Using Smart Meters? It was an interesting piece of research which was highly innovative, both in its approach, data sources used, and used some fairly novel and advanced techniques such as neural networking. Overall, all of the reviewers agreed that it was a really good project, which should prove very valuable to the industry as well. So, if you'd like to come up.
Bruce, you might need to stand probably in front of the lectern, I think. Make sure we get some good photos.
Okay. Stand here?
Forward, I thought.
Forward? Okay.
Further over, so...
Yeah. There's your prize. Unfortunately, you get James's book as well, so there you go. Right, next prize winner is Tom Berry at the University of Leeds, working with the Co-op. This project was entitled The Way Forward, Why Workplace Zones Analysis Key to Understanding Transient Trade for the Co-op. Again, the reviewers all agreed that this was a well-presented dissertation with a good use of visualizations. The academic rigour of this project really shone through. And the potential impact, again, on the company partner was really evident. So, Tom, if you'd like to come up. I'm suitably placed now. No worries, congratulations. Thank you. No worries. Oh, don't forget the book. Congratulations. The next winner is Carlo Lugma at UCL, working with the local data company. This project was entitled Relations Between Structure and Performance of Retail Centres in England and Wales and Demographics of their catchment areas. Again, all reviewers agreed that this was had high academic quality, which really shone through. It had a rich methodology, making use of an array of different approaches, including spatial interaction models and geographically weighted regressions. Findings were well presented throughout, good use of visualizations, and again, provided some really interesting insights which should prove valuable to the industry. If you'd like to come up, Carlo. Congratulations. Thank you. There you go. I'm learning. And finally, the first prize goes to Clems Zoutner at the University of Westminster, working with EasyJet. This project was entitled Identifying the Main Drivers of Customer Satisfaction and Dissatisfaction by Mining Verbatim Customer Feedback. And again, all reviewers agreed that this project was a well-positioned piece of work, proving highly valuable to the industry through mining textual responses of consumer surveys, using topic models and sentiment analysis. Academically, the dissertation was excellent, and importantly, the results were carefully presented and interpreted. Some refinement to this work could be extremely useful more broadly to the industry, in helping retailers mine the sometimes lengthy customer feedback and responses to surveys. Congratulations, Tom. No worries, congratulations. Thank you. And there's the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I look forward to looking at some of those dissertations and projects at the lunchtime break.